We're talking about the story of the Fijian veteran. Taitusi Ratucaucau is his name, facing the £30,000 hospital bill despite living here for many years, serving in the armed forces for 10 years, going to Iraq, going to Afghanistan, and then when he came out of the army, paid all his taxes and national insurance, and suddenly finds himself in the wrong part of a hospital because he needs very serious brain surgery and told, you got to pay for it. You've got to pay for it. What is going on here? 30,000 quid, by the way. This is an awful lot of money. Earlier this month, he was rushed to hospital after collapsing after doctors discovered a brain tumour which required urgent surgery. However, he was told he would have to be treated as an overseas patient because of his immigration status. He's now on one of a number of Commonwealth veterans who are now taking legal action against the government over their right to settle in the UK. He's with us now.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
You are recovering from some pretty major surgery. How is your recovery process, firstly?
Yeah, it's going well now. Everything is going into places now.
Okay, so this would have been a very scary moment for you. You've been in scary situations in your army career, but suddenly you find yourself at a central London hospital. Things aren't feeling right, and you discover you've got a brain tumour.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't know I have this brain tumor. I was surprised when they took me to the hospital and had a scan.
And that's when you got the news.
Yeah, they break the news to me. You have a brain tumor. You're going to go for operation ASAP.
Wow. How did that feel compared to some of the situations you've been in terms of your military service?
To be fair, I feel quite nervous when they told me I'm going to have an operation on my head.
Yeah.
Because I never expect this to be happen to me.
Of course. Yeah, I don't think anybody does, do they? One moment everything's, going well, and suddenly, a headache or something isn't quite right. You end up at the hospital, and wow, brains. Even the term brain surgery, of course, it's huge. And you appear to have got through this. So, are you out of the woods now? Are you okay in that respect, medically speaking?
Yeah, I'm happy to be alive and talking again.
Yeah,
and my recovery is going very well now.
But of course, it's come at a price because of your own status, despite the fact you've served 10 years in the British Army, despite the fact you've been to places like Iraq and Afghanistan and seen all manner of terrible things and put your life on the line. Somebody wanted to charge you £30,000.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the charges coming up when I was in hospital. I feel sad, and I didn't realize it's going to be like this.
So there was no sense or no knowledge that when it came to seeking medical treatment like this, that you would have to pay for it.
Yeah, and I told them I don't know where to get the money from. I don't have this money to pay for my.
Do they tell you this before the operation or after the operation?
It's after the operation.
Okay. Well, that would have been pretty grim to be told that before the operation, of course. Nonetheless, something rather amazing happened because somebody started a crowdfunding page, and this has raised a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, I've seen it. For me, I try to thank these people for their kind donations, and they were very helpful to them. I am very happy for them to do this from the bottom of my heart. Even I haven't met some of these kind people. Some I know them, but the rest I even don't know them.
Well, listen, I'm sure you want to thank them all, and I think people will know that. And I put this story onto Facebook a little earlier, and the outpouring of anger, firstly, at what you'd gone through, but also the well-wishers was extraordinary. So whatever legal issues you've had to go through, it seems the great British public are very much behind your experience here. And you must still sense, despite being overwhelmed at the generosity of people donating, you must, Taitusi, have a sense of anger that you served for the British military for 10 years. You get ill and then somebody sends you a £30,000 bill. That must make you angry.
Yeah, of course. Make me angry and sad because I can't believe it. It's going to be like this. The charges they're going to give me.
And you've been paying your tax and national insurance too.
Yeah. It's very complicated.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of you look at this story, and when I first read your story, I assumed I hadn't read it properly. I thought there must be more to this story, and there isn't more to this story. It's very simple, and that is that despite 10 years in the British Army, despite the endeavours in the British Army and the risks and putting your life on the line as every soldier does, you were not entitled to utilise the NHS like everybody else. Your status didn't allow for it. That's shocking.
Yeah, because this is ongoing situations because the Home Office, this is where we still waiting for them.
Yeah.
If they can do something about our status. If they can do it to other guys, to say, for example, for these asylum seekers, why can't they just be turned around and do the same?
Well, they can do it for if you were an Afghan interpreter working for the British, the fees are waived. If you are a soldier, they're not waived. So it is utterly confusing, and I would imagine quite insulting, and I think most people would understand your anger. Taitusi, thank you, sir. We will keep in touch and we'll keep across this as well. We did ask a little more from the government. They simply told us we cannot comment on individual cases because of ongoing legal proceedings. But you heard it there. That is Taitusi Ratucaucau, who has served 10 years in the British Army, and upon leaving, years down the line, he gets ill. He has to pay for his NHS treatment. Speak to Vinita Templeton, firstly, who's the lawyer for the very campaign that we just alluded to. Vinita Templeton, afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. So, Commonwealth veterans who've served in the British Army are firstly not entitled to automatic settled status, and even when they are, they're not entitled to free NHS treatment. Is that broadly the case here?
Well, if they do get settled, then they would be entitled to NHS treatment. The situation relating to Mr. Ratucaucau is that he is one of quite a large number of Commonwealth veterans who were not properly informed of steps that they needed to take in order to apply for settlement, and only found out very belatedly of the need to make that application. And the issue that is in the way of them regularising their stay in the UK is our very extortionate Home Office application fees.
So I understand the fees for sort of the settled status and getting through all of that is around about £10,000. Is that right?
Well, an individual fee is £2,389, and that application would need.
But if you've got your family with you, is what I'm saying.
If you have your family with you, and if they don't have regularised status, then that would be the same, and each family member would be required to make that application separately and pay a separate fee of that sum. So yes, it can accumulate, which is the issue that Mr. Ratucaucau is faced with.
Indeed. You're up against it here, aren't you? Because the Department for Defence and the Home Office are saying although they can't comment on individual cases, they do defend the current policy. So how do you penetrate that to begin with legally?
Well, we have commenced that procedure. We've served a letter before action. They've responded. I mean, that in normal course of litigation is a process that we have to go through. They are defending it, which is something that we have to deal with. But as it stands, we are committed to dealing with it, and we are going forward with the proposed litigation, and nothing has changed on that front.
Sure. Has anyone tested this before, Vinita? Has this been challenged in the past?
The issue of this group of veterans, that issue has come up over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years repeatedly. Last year, there have been campaigns on a tangent issue, which is also part of our claim, which is in relating to the large fees they have to pay. The trend has been that when these issues come up, they tend to get very quickly resolved on a case-to-case basis, because we do know that the Home Office are aware of this failure to discharge a group of veterans properly, and that failure predominantly relates to a period prior to July 2014. Policies changed after July 2014. Prior to that, and especially not confined to, but especially during the period of 2010, 2012, there were some real failures to advise those being discharged during that period, and this is what has led to groups of people being left without regularised status. When that situation becomes identified, they may well, many of them seek assistance from armed forces charities, who will advise them to either make an application if that can be afforded, or to go home. And those who can't afford to make these applications choose to either go home or to remain in the United Kingdom if they've got a family and there's too much invested interest in remaining in the United Kingdom.
So they could find themselves remaining in the United Kingdom, but without settled status, which is where we arrive in the situation where somebody can stay, they can pay their taxes, their national insurance, but that still wouldn't entitle them to be treated on the NHS for free.
That's correct. I mean, with veterans, with those who serve in the armed forces, they come and all of them have a vignette, a stamp in their passport, but that is not time defined. So upon leaving the army, at the time of being recruited, all of them understood that if they were to serve a minimum of 4 years in the army, they would be entitled to remain in the UK indefinitely. But they were not of the understanding that they had to take steps in order to be able to remain. And because they had that vignette status exemptions in their passports, many of them were able to leave the army and enter civil society seamlessly. And indeed, in the processes of being, in the process of being discharged, all of them would have been put through courses in order to prepare them to enter civilian society. All of them were given training, advice about applying for housing, sent for training, encouraged to apply for driver's license, for HGV licenses. So they were all given expectations that they were being prepared to enter civilian society. So this is what happened, and for a very long time they did so and had no trouble because they could get jobs. But it only became an issue as the environment became more hostile, and they were being asked by employers to even retrospectively provide proof of permission to work. And it was at that time that they started to realise that they had steps that they needed to take through word of mouth, asking people, and it's that sort of thing that just snowballed from one situation to the other. Now, I have represented others in the situation over the years since 2013, and there have been cases. There was one case in November 2013 that was widely reported, which was covered in the media extensively, which I believe is what triggered the change in policy in 2014. I might be wrong, but timing suggests that that was the case. And this was a case of a soldier in exactly the same situation who was on the brink of being removed. And overnight, Theresa May, who was then Home Secretary, granted indefinite leave to remain overnight. And that was after we launched judicial review. A year later, actually months later, at that time, I was dealing with another case. Again, that case was settled favourably in favour of in our favour. So this is an issue that is a clear breach, and we have we have a lot of evidence of that. What has happened over the years is when these issues crop up, they do get resolved, but on a piecemeal basis.
Sure.
But what has happened is, over the years, people have heard of this becoming resolved. They've come forward, they've asked for help, and all at once, within a very short period of time, I was approached by several, and the 8 clients who approached me around the same time. It's just an issue that needs to be resolved. And it's not good enough for the government to simply resolve it on a piecemeal basis and try to sweep it under the carpet, which is what is being done. And that, as far as we're concerned, the reason why we're pursuing this legal action is that we don't feel that that's good enough, and we feel that that has to change. Furthermore, the issue of these fees continue to impact on veterans because others are still facing this issue of not being able to afford fees. There are other people who are in the situation who could not afford settlement fees, which are very, very costly. And what they've done is settled for less. So they've paid a lesser fee for a lesser grant of status. So they've been granted 2.5 years at a time, for instance, which would only make them eligible for indefinite leave to remain after 10 years. But that would mean that every 2.5 years, they have to come up with a payment of no less than £1,033 as it stands today, plus an immigration surcharge of £400 per year, which is an additional £1,000 per person. And that figure is to increase in October to £629 per individual. So you can imagine how prohibitive it is, a cost for each individual.
Indeed.
So what we're finding at the moment is others are coming forward, having taken that course of action and finding that they can't make applications going forward, and again falling into irregular, without regularity.
So an extraordinary amount of legal minefields in this story, which no veteran could reasonably have understood at the time when all of that info was being dispensed to them about coming out and applying for licenses and getting into the workplace. And, this huge area that does require information, of course, was clearly not forthcoming at the time. Vinita, thank you. Vinita Templeton is one of the lawyers